So the FCC has officially ruled to change the definition of broadband to 25 megabits down and 4 megabits up. Um, Now, while this is a big improvement from what it was previously, the definition of broadband, I believe it was like 5 or 6 megs down. This still isn't going to put us on par with the rest of the developed world. It just isn't. So people are asking, what does this mean? Well, basically, it changes the way that Comcast and the other big telecoms can advertise. For one, they can't say that our 3 megabits down, DSL connection is considered broadband. That will essentially make that, quote unquote illegal. At least they shouldn't be allowed to do that now. And there are some other rules and regulations about how they have to offer broadband in certain areas and things like that. So it's nice, but it's a little bit of window dressing. It doesn't address the real problem with the lack of competition and the just the lack of the infrastructure rollout that these big telecoms have failed to do, even after the '96 Telecommunications Act, which gave them billions, I believe, tens of billions even, in subsidies and various incentives and deregulation, with the promise in law that they would roll out the infrastructure that we would need, in the 21st century. And yeah, so I mean, our internet speeds have largely stayed the same over the last 5-6 years. Maybe a little bit better. I'm trying to think back 5 or 6 years. And yeah, I mean, you've seen very marginal increases in speed and reliability. And that really, I mean, it's so obvious that I feel like I shouldn't even have to say it, but that is a lack of competition. The only reason Comcast, mainly, and Time Warner Cable as well, are able to, stagnate in their speeds and their pricing and the overall technology that they offer is because there's no one competing with them, specifically, in certain regions. And you think about any other sector or business, and this would never stand. I mean, iPhones, Samsung, Apple, even with just 2 or 3 people competing, really competing, you get innovation, you get low prices or lower prices. There's a reason why people like Apple products, why people enjoy their Galaxy phones. It's because there's been a lot of effort put into how do we make this a seamless, fun experience that users will want to come back to. If you had an iPhone 4, well, if it's terrible and then you call up their customer service and they call you an asshole and spend 6 hours on the phone telling you why you're stupid, then you're not likely to get the iPhone 5 or iPhone 6. You might switch over to, Samsung or BlackBerry or Windows, Nokia, whatever. Competition, I'm not a huge advocate of the whole free market, let's deregulate everything, but competition can solve a lot of problems, especially the problems we're seeing with our internet. And we're seeing that with Google Fiber. Immediately, as soon as Google even thinks about moving into a market, Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, immediately, oh, look at that, without doing anything, we were instantly able to drop the price and increase the speeds. Look at that. And they didn't even have to do anything. One more problem that I don't think gets talked about quite enough is the crony capitalism, how Comcast is able to lobby certain states to pass laws that basically outlaw competition, and it's done under the guise of, well, they rolled out the infrastructure, they paid for it all, so we need to give them a monopoly at least for 20 years so that they can recoup their initial investment, which makes sense on the surface. But when you consider the tax loopholes, the subsidies, the tax cuts, along with all the other sweetheart deals that they've gotten to roll out the various infrastructure, to roll out the infrastructure in all these various cities and states. And then you include the fact that they've already had a monopoly for all this time, and it's just not working. We have to get rid of it. I don't care, how much money they put into the infrastructure. That needs to change. Companies need to be able to compete with them, because we are dramatically falling behind the rest of the world in internet speed, reliability, and just the fact that most Americans have to deal with these companies on a regular basis, and it's creating such a headache for the average American. I mean, it's insane that these companies are still profitable, let alone, allowed to exist. I mean, the most hated company, if our capitalist structure was working the way it is supposed to work, whatever company was voted most hated company would not be a company anymore. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. The cream is supposed to rise to to the top or whatever, and the bad companies are either supposed to change or die off. That's how it's supposed to work. But we're not seeing that. We're seeing them being propped up because they are monopolies, oftentimes with the government's help. And the fix isn't to get rid of government. I hate that libertarian crap that, oh, well, if there was no government, then they couldn't corrupt the government. Okay, well, if you get a flat tire, you could work, you could sweat for a little while and spend the money and go through the hardship of fixing the flat tire. Now, it's not a guarantee that you will never get a flat again, but you could fix it and it would work the way it's supposed to. Or you could say, well, hey, if I just get rid of my car, I won't have any more flat tires, will I? Yeah, but you also won't have a car and you'll have to walk everywhere. So the answer is to build a wall where not a nickel goes back and forth between companies and the government, and then we can really start to see reasonable, smart rules like reclassifying them as Title II, under Title II of the, I believe that's also under the 96 Telecom Act. But yeah, I mean, everyone's talking about net neutrality and reclassifying them so that they can't discriminate. And actually saw a really good video on the Young Turks explaining why we might actually win the net neutrality battle. And long story short, it all boils down to the people that back these Silicon Valley startups. Those are Wall Street guys. Those are your hedge funds. Those are your angel investors, your big capital guys, and those guys, as much sway as Comcast and Verizon and them have in Washington, it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat those investor guys, especially whenever you throw in the fact that Google and Facebook are also have come on board in the net neutrality fight. Yeah, so comment below. Let me know what you guys think on this subject, what your thoughts are. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.